the Redeemer's heavy task. He must enter the eternity of night and know God's darkness as he knows his Son. For this, he must go down into the pit. For this, he must invade the dolorous vast, imperishable and wide and infinite. He still must travel hell, the world to save.
Good morning. We're reading in Book 6, the Book of Fate, Canto 2, the Way of Fate and the Problem of Pain. We've come to page 451 at the break. So in this canto, so far, we have seen the Queen raise the questions to Narad, the heavenly sage, as to why there is this pain and suffering in the world. And she describes that suffering that human beings undergo, both personally, individually in their lives, and also collectively with all the wars and famines and all the horrible things that strike humanity. So she asks why, if there is a God, that he should allow such a thing to happen. Or does he not have the power to overcome this calamity that humanity has to face? And Narad gives reply, the beginning of his reply. And in particular, he speaks of the need and purpose of pain and suffering in God's overall plan. And he speaks of this most powerfully on page 443 and 444 towards the end. And I'll just review that. He says, by pain and joy, the bright and tenebrous twins, the inanimate world perceived its sentient soul. Else had the inconscient never suffered change. Pain is the hammer of the gods to break, a dead resistance in the mortal's heart, his slow inertia as of living stone. If the heart were not forced to want and weep, his soul would have lain down content, at ease, and never thought to exceed the human start, and never learn to climb towards the sun. This earth is full of labor, packed with pain. Throes of an endless birth coerce her still. The centuries end, the ages vainly pass, and yet the Godhead in her is not born. The ancient mother faces all with joy, calls for the ardent pang, the grandiose thrill. For with pain and labor, all creation comes. This earth is full of the anguish of the gods. Ever they travail, driven by time's goad, and strive to work out the eternal will and shape the life divine in mortal forms. His will must be worked out in human breasts against the evil that rises from the gulfs, against the world's ignorance and its obstinate strength, against the stumblings of man's pervert will, against the deep folly of his human mind, against the blind reluctance of his heart. The spirit is doomed to pain till man is free. And after this, he gives an account of the sacrifice of the avatar who comes into the world in a human form and himself takes on the pain and suffering and shows man the way out through his example, and also brings down greater and greater powers of the light of the divine into the human world that gradually relieve and transform this earth. So he leads the way out of this pain and suffering for humanity. So we had read through, as we usually do when we start a canto without stopping, we had read through up to this point, and then we went through and reviewed it. So now we'll read through this second half of the canto, and then we'll go back and examine it in greater detail. So let's begin at the break on 451, Arten.
Must life carry its seed of death, and sorrow's plaint be heard in the slow night? O mortal, bear this greater world's law of pain. In thy hard passage through a suffering world, lean for thy soul's support on heaven's strange. Turn towards high truth, aspire to love and peace. A little bliss is lent thee from above. A touch divine upon thy human days, make of thy daily way a pilgrimage. For through small joys and griefs thou movest towards God. Hates not towards Godhead on a dangerous road. Open thy doorways to the nameless power. Climb not to Godhead by the Titan's road. Against the law he pits his single will. Across its way he throws his pride of might. Heavenward he clambers on a stairs of storms, aspiring to life near the deathless sun. He strives with a giant strength to wrest by force from life and nature the immortal's right. He takes by storms the world and fate and heaven. He comes not to the high world market maker's seat. He waits not for the outstretched hand of God to rise him out of his mortality.
Thank you. Margaret?
All he would make his own, leave nothing free, stretching his small self to cope with the infinite. Obstructing the God's open ways, he makes his own estate of the earth's air and light. A monopolist of the world energy, he dominates the life of common men. His pain and others' pain he makes his means. On death and suffering he builds his throne. In the hurry and clangor of his acts of mind, in a riot and excess of fame and shame, by his magnitudes of hate and violence, by the quaking of the world beneath his tread, he matches himself against the eternal's calm, and feels in himself the greatness of a god. Power is his image of celestial self. The Titan's heart is a sea of fire and force. He exults in the death of things and ruin and fall. He feeds his strength with his own and others' pain. In the world's pathos and passion he takes delight. His pride, his might, call for the struggle and pang. He glories in the sufferings of the flesh. He covers the stigmata of the Stoic's name.
Thank you. Jean.
He glories in the sufferings of the flesh and covers the stigmata with the Stoic's name. His eyes, blinded and visionless, stare at the sun. The seeker's sight, receding from his heart, can find no more the light of eternity. He sees the beyond as an emptiness void of soul, and takes his night for a dark infinite. His nature magnifies the unreal blank, and sees in naught the sole reality. He would stamp his single figure on the world, obsess the world's rumors with his single name. His moments center the vast universe. He sees his little self as a very God. His little I has swallowed the whole world. His ego has stretched into infinity. His mind, a beat in original nothingness, ciphers his thought on a slate of hourless time. He builds on a mighty vacancy of soul, a huge philosophy of nothingness. In him Nirvana lives and speaks and acts, impossibly creating a universe. An eternal zero is his formless self, his spirit the void, impersonal absolute.
Thank you.
Take not that stride, O growing soul of man. Cast not thyself into that night of God. The soul's suffering is not eternity's key, or ransom by sorrow heaven's demand on life. O mortal, bear, but ask not for the stroke. Too soon will grief and anguish find thee out. Too enormous is that venture for thy will. Only in limits can man's strength be safe. Yet is infinity thy spirit's goal. Its bliss is there behind the world's face of tears. A power is in thee that thou knowest not. Thou art a vessel of the imprisoned spark. It seeks relief from time's envelopment, and while thou hast shut it in, the seal is pain. Bliss is the Godhead's crown, eternal, free, unburdened by life's blind mystery of pain. Pain is the signature of the ignorance, attesting the secret God denied by life. Until life finds him, pain can never end.
Thank you.
I lost the line.
Third line from the bottom. Calm is self's victory.
602. Calm is self's victory, overcoming fate, where thou shalt find at last thy road to bliss. Bliss is the secret stuff of all that lives. Even pain and grief are garbs of world delight. It hides behind thy sorrow and thy cry. Because thy strength is a part and not God's whole. Because afflicted by the little self, thy consciousness forgets to be divine. As it walks in the vague penumbra of the flesh and cannot bear the world's tremendous touch, thou criest out and sayest that there is pain, indifference, pain and joy, a triple disguise, attire of the rapturous dancer in the ways. Withhold from thee the body of God's bliss. Thy spirit's strength shall make thee one with God. Thy agony shall change to ecstasy. Indifference deepen into infinity's calm, and joy laugh nude on the peaks of the Absolute.
Thank you.
O mortal who complains of death and fate, accuse none of the harms thyself hast caused. This troubled world thou hast chosen for thy home. Thou art thyself the author of thy pain. Once in the immortal boundlessness of self, in a vast of truth and consciousness and light, the soul looked out from its felicity. It felt the spirit's interminable bliss. It knew itself deathless, timeless, faceless one. It saw the eternal, lived in the infinite, then curious of a shadow thrown by truth. It strained towards some otherness of self. It was drawn to an unknown face, peering through the night. It sensed a negative infinity, a void supernal whose immense excess, imitating God's and everlasting time, offered a ground for nature's adverse birth and matter's rigid hard unconsciousness, harboring the brilliance of transient soul that lights up birth and death and ignorant life.
Thank you. Thank you. E?
A mind arose that stared at nothingness, till figures formed of what could never be. It housed the contrary of all that is. A naught appeared as being's huge sealed cause, its dumb support in a blank infinite, in whose abysm spirit must disappear. A darkened nature lived and held the seed of spirit hidden and feigning not to be. Eternal consciousness became a freak of an unsouled almighty inconscient, and breathed no more as spirit's native air. Bliss was an incident of a mortal hour, a stranger in the insentient universe. As one drawn by the grandeur of the void, the soul attracted leaned to the abyss. It longed for the adventure of ignorance and the marvel and surprise of the unknown, and the endless possibility that lurked in the womb of chaos and in nothing's gulf, or look down from the unfathomed eyes of chance.
Thank you.
It tired of its unchanging happiness. It turned away from immortality. It was drawn to hazard's call and danger's charm. It yearned to the pathos of grief, the drama of pain. Perdition's peril, the wounded bear escape. The music of ruin and its glamour and crash. The savor of pity and the gamble of love. And passion and the ambiguous face of fate. A world of hard endeavor and difficult toil. And battle on extinction's perilous verge. A clash of forces, a vast incertitude. The joy of creation out of nothingness. Strange meetings on the roads of ignorance. And the companionship of half-known souls. Or the solitary greatness and lonely force of a separate being conquering its world. Called it from its too safe eternity. A huge descent began, a giant fall. For what the spirit sees creates a truth, and what the soul imagines is made a world. A thought that leaped from the timeless can become indicator of cosmic consequence and the itinerary of the gods, a cyclic movement in eternal time. Thus came, born from a blind, tremendous choice, this great, perplexed, and discontent world, this haunt of ignorance, this home of pain. There are pitched desires' tents, grief's headquarters. A vast disguise conceals the eternal's bliss.
Thank you.
Then Ashupati answered to the seer, "It's then the spirit ruled by an outward world. O seer, is there no remedy within? But what is fate if not the spirit's will? After long time fulfilled by cosmic force, it deemed a mighty power had come with her. Is not that power the high compare of fate?" But Narad answered, covering truth with truth, "O Ashupati, random seems the ways, along whose banks your footsteps stray or run, in casual hours or moments of the gods. Yet your latest stumbling are foreseen above. Infallibly, the curves of life are drawn, following the stream of time through the unknown. They are led by a clue and calm immortals keep. The balzoned heliograph of prophet mourns, a meaning more sublime in symbols writes, than sealed through wakes too. But of this high script, how shall my voice convince the minds of earth? Heaven's whispers, heaven's wiser love rejects the mortal's prayers. Unblind by the breath of his desire, unclouded by the mists of fear and hope, it beats above the strife of love with death. It keeps for her a privilege of pain."
Thank you.
A greatness in the daughter soul reside that can transform herself and around, but must cross on stone of suffering to its goal. Although desired like nectar cup of heavenly either made the sought this air. She too must share the human need of grief, and out only thought half open door. He cut the boundless truth into sky strips, and every strip he takes for all the even. He stresses at infinity possibility and gives to the plastic vast the name of chance. He sees the long result of on all wise force, planning the skirt of step in endless time, but in it links image of senseless chain, or a dead hand of cold necessity. He answers not to mystic mother heart, misses the ardent evening of her breast, and feel cold, rigid limbs of lifeless love. Thank you.
The will of the timeless working out in time, in the free absolute steps of cosmic truth. He thinks a dead machine or unconscious fate. A magician's formulas have made matter's laws, and while they last, all things by them are bound. But the Spirit's consent is needed for each act, and freedom walks in the same pace with law. All here can change if the magician choose, if human will could be made one with God's, if human thought could echo the thoughts of God, man might be all knowing and omnipotent. But now he walks in nature's doubtful ray. Yet can the mind of man receive God's light? The force of man can be driven by God's force. Then is he a miracle doing miracles. For only so can he be nature's. It is decreed, and Satyavan must die. The hour is fixed, chosen the fatal stroke. What else shall be is written in her soul, but till the hour reveals the fateful script, the writing waits illegible and mute.
Thank you.
Fate is truth working out in ignorance. O King, thy fate is a transaction done at every hour between nature and thy soul, with God for its foreseeing arbiter. Fate is a balance drawn in destiny's book. Man can accept his fate. He can refuse. Even if the one maintains the unseen decree, he writes thy refusal in thy credit page. For doom is not a close, a mystic seal, arisen from the tragic crash of life, arisen from the body's torture and death. The spirit rises mightier by defeat. Its godlike wings grow wider with each fall. its splendid failures, some to victory. O man, the events that meet thee on thy road, though they smite thy body and soul with joy and grief, are not thy fate. They touch thee awhile and pass. Even death can cut not short thy spirit's walk. Thy goal, the road thou choosest, are thy fate. On the altar, throwing thy thoughts, thy heart, thy works, thy fate is a long sacrifice to the gods, till they have opened to thee thy secret self and made thee one with the indwelling God.
O soul, intruder in nature's ignorance, armed traveler to the unseen supernal heights, the spirit's fate is a battle and ceaseless march against invisible opponent powers, a passage from matter into timeless self. Adventure through blind, unforeseen time, a forced advance through a long line of lives. It pushes its spearhead through the centuries. Across the dust and mire of the earthly plane, on many guarded lines and dangerous fronts, in dire assaults, in wounded, slow retreats, holding the ideals ranged and battered fort, or fighting against odds in lonely posts, or camped in night around in bivouac fires, awaiting the tardy trumpets of the dawn, in hunger and in plenty and in pain, through peril and through triumph and through fall, through life's green lanes and over her desert sands, up the bald moor, along the sunlight ridge, in serried columns, with a struggling rear, led by its nomad vanguard's synod's fire, marches the army of the way-lost God. Then late the joy ineffable is felt, then he remembers his forgotten self. He has refound the skies from which he fell.
Thank you.
At length, its front's indomitable line forces the last passes of the ignorance, advancing beyond nature's last known bounds, reconnoitering the formidable unknown beyond the landmarks of things visible. It mounts through a miraculous upper air, till climbing the mute summit of the world, it stands upon the splendor peaks of God. In vain, through Mons and Satavian must die. His death is a beginning of greater life. Death is the spirit opportunity. A vast invention has brought two souls close, and love and death conspire towards one great end. For out of danger and pain, heaven bliss shall come. Time's unforeseen event, God's secret plan. This world has not built these random bricks of chance. A blind God is not destiny's architect. A conscious power has drawn the plan of life. There is a meaning in each curve and line. It is an architecture high and grand, by many named, nameless mason built, in which unseen hands obey the unseen, and of its master builder he is one.
Thank you.
Queen, strive no more to change the secret will. Time's accidents are steps in its vast scheme. Bring not the brief and helpless human tears across the phantomless moments of a heart that knows its single will and God's as one. It can embrace its hostile destiny. It sits apart with grief and facing death, affronting adverse fate armed and alone. In this enormous world standing apart, in the mightiness of her silent spirit's will, in the passion of her soul of sacrifice, her lonely strength facing the universe, affronting fate asks not man's help nor God's. Sometimes one life is charged with earth's destiny. It cries not for succor from the time-bound powers. Alone she is equal to her mighty task. Intervene not in a strife too great for thee, a struggle too deep for mortal thought to sound. Its question to its nature's rigid bounds, when the soul fronts nude or garbs the infinite, its too vast theme of a lonely mortal will, pacing the silence of eternity.
Thank you. I'll read. As a star uncompanioned moves in heaven, unastonished by the immensities of space, traveling infinity by its own light. The great are strongest when they stand alone. A God-given might of being is their force, a ray from self-solitude of light, the guide. The soul that can live alone with itself meets God. Its lonely universe is their rendezvous. A day may come when she must stand unhelped on a dangerous brink of the world's doom and hers, carrying the world's future on her lonely breast, carrying the human hope in a heart left soul, to conquer or fail on a last desperate verge, alone with death and close to extinction's edge. Her single greatness in that last dire scene must cross alone a perilous bridge in time and reach an apex of world destiny where all is won or all is lost for man. Arta?
In that tremendous silence, lone and lost, of a deciding hour in the world's fate, in her soul's climbing beyond the mortal time, when she stands soul with death or soul with God, apart upon a silent, desperate brink, alone with herself and death and destiny, as on some verge between time and timelessness, when being must end or life rebuild its base, Alone she must conquer, or alone must fall. No human aid can reach her in that hour. No armored God stands shining at her side. Cry not to heaven, for she alone can save. For this the silent force came, missioned down. In her the conscious will took human shape. She only can save herself and save the world. O Queen, stand back from that stupendous sin. Come not between her and her hour of fate. Her hour must come, and none can intervene. Think not to turn her from her heaven-sent task. Strive not to save her from her own high will. Thou hast no place in that tremendous strife. Thy love and longing are not arbiters there. Leave the world's fate and her to God's sole guard.
Thank you.
Even if he seems to leave her to her alone strength, even though all falters and falls and sees an end, and the heart fails, and only are death and night, God given her strength can battle against doom, even on a brink where death alone seems close, and no human strength can hinder or can help. Think not to intercede with a hidden will. Intrude not twixt her spirit and its force, but leave her to her mighty self and fate. He spoke and ceased and left the earthly scene. Away from the strife and suffering on our globe, he turned towards his far-off blissful home. A brilliant arrow pointing straight to heaven, the luminous body of the ethereal seer assailed the purple glory of the noon and disappeared like a receding star, vanishing into the light of the unseen. But still, a cry was heard in the infinite. Still, to the listening soul on mortal earth, a high and far imperishable voice chanted the anthem of eternal love. End of Canto 2, end of Book 6.
Thank you. So now we go back to page 451 at the break.
Till then must life carry its seed of death, and sorrow's plaint be heard in the slow night. O mortal, bear this great world's law of pain. In thy hard passage through a suffering world, lean for the soul's support on heaven's strength. Turn towards high truth, aspire to love and peace. A little bliss is lent thee from above, a touch divine upon the human days. Make of the daily way a pilgrimage, for through small joys and griefs thou movest towards God. Haste not towards Godhead on a dangerous road. Open not thy doorways to a nameless power. Climb not to Godhead by the Titan's road. Against the law he pits his single will. Across its way he throws his pride of might. Heavenward he clambers on a stair of storms, aspiring to live near the deathless sun. He strives with a giant's strength to wrest by force from life and nature, the immortal's right. He takes by storm the world and fate and heaven. He comes not to the high world maker's seat. He waits not for the outstretched hand of God to raise him out of mortality.
Thank you. So we'll pause there now. So this section starts out with till then. So it refers back to the previous section in which Sri Aurobindo was describing the work of the avatar to bring down the light of the Supreme down into the inconscient base of existence, and to travel into hell and face that darkness and the adversary at the roots of our material world. And when he does that, he brings the supramental light and power which shall transform the world at the very base of its existence. And then all contraries shall be healed. The eternal opposites shall clasp each other. Pain shall become a violent, fiery joy. Evil shall turn back to its original good. Then shall be ended here the law of pain. Earth shall be made a home of heaven's light. A seer heaven born shall lodge in human breasts. A superconscient beam shall touch men's eyes. And the truth-conscious world come down to earth, invading matter with the Spirit's ray. Then shall the world Redeemer's task be done. So till then, life must carry its seed of death and sorrow's plaint. This plaint is an utterance of grief or sorrow. Even specifically, it's like the beating of the chest in sorrow and grief. Sorrow's plaint be heard in the slow night. And then Narad says, for now, bear this great world's law of pain. Have to bear it until the avatar brings down this transforming light and power into the world. And he says, in thy hard passage, lean for thy soul's support on heaven's strength. Turn towards high truth. Aspire to love and peace. A little bliss is lent thee from above, a touch divine upon thy human days. Make of thy daily way a pilgrimage, for through small joys and griefs thou movest towards God. So that's his advice for us. And then he gives a warning not to follow the way of the Titan, the Asura, or Rakshasa. And then he describes what they do. And here I would like to read something from Shraddhavan. She says, Narad is explaining about the Titan's way, the way that is just the opposite of the true spiritual way to fulfillment. And he is describing what this Titan is, this powerful figure. And as we read this description, we can think that Sri Aurobindo was probably writing these lines in the last years of the Second World War or a little later. And the picture that he gives of this titanic being who wants to rule everything in the universe according to his own egoistic will and vision for the sake of power and control fits some of the powerful leaders of that time. Narad is advising us, all human beings, not to be ambitious and try to seize the kingdom of God by storm. Climb not to Godhead by the Titan's road. Narad tells us that he is not going to reach the seat of the high world maker, the creator of this world, because he does not wait for God to stretch out his hand and lift him up out of his mortality, his humanity, his death-bound state. He wants to extend his small self, stretch the little human form and personality that he has to cope with the infinite, the whole of infinity. He wants to claim everything for himself. So we'll continue.
All he would make his own, leave nothing free, stretching his small self to cope with the infinite. Obstructing the gods' open ways, he makes his own estate of the earth, air, and light. a monopolist of the world energy. He dominates the life of common man. His pain and others' pain he makes his means. On death and suffering he builds his throne. In the hurry and clangor of his acts of might, in a riot and excess of fame and shame, by his magnitudes of hate and violence, by the quaking of the world beneath his tread, he matches himself against the eternal's calm, and feels in himself the greatness of a god. Power is his image of celestial self. The Titan's heart is a sea of fire and force. He exults in the death of things and ruin and fall. He feeds his strength with his own and others' pain. In the world's pathos and passion he takes delight. His pride, his might call for the struggle and pang. He glories in the sufferings of the flesh and covers the stigmata with the Stoic's name.
Thank you. So I'll read some more from Shraddhavan on this. She says, this is the image of the human tyrant, the human being who thinks he has the right to enslave every other human being and control everything in the way that he thinks is right. Sometimes such beings have received support from the hostile worlds, from the adverse planes, and they have dominated for some time whole masses of humanity. And that has always been a terrible disaster for the people who fall under his control. The gods, the cosmic powers who are furthering the divine's will in the universe, have their ways open. They allow things to move freely. But this Titan, he puts himself in the way, obstructs and blocks the open ways of the gods. And he does his best to control and make his own estate where he can be the ruler, the whole air and light of the earth. He has this terrible possessiveness and wishes to control everything. He wants to monopolize all the energy that is there in the world. To monopolize means to deny access to everyone else other than oneself. Control it all. This Titan dominates the lives of common men. So ordinary people are no longer free. They have to live under the domination of that terrible tyrant. So that is the theme of this canto, the problem of pain. And one way that pain comes into this world is through titanic selfishness. These beings exult in pain. He is ready to suffer pain for himself and to inflict pain on other people. He makes this his means of domination. He builds his throne, his seat of control, on death and suffering. He wants his name on everybody's lips all the time and on everybody's minds and hearts. Here the word shame does not mean that he is ashamed, but the things that he does are shameful. He indulges in magnitudes of hate and violence. Ordinary people may sometimes feel hatred and may perform acts of violence, but these are on a small scale and limited. But the Titan indulges in them on a huge scale. He enjoys feeling the whole world quaking. Of course, we talk about an earthquake, which is a natural phenomenon. But this is what the Titan is doing. He's making the whole world quake with fear because of his power. He feels himself equal to the calm of the eternal. He feels in himself that he is as great as any god because power is his image of celestial self. That is how he thinks of God, that God is all powerful and that he will be as powerful here on earth. And then Narad says, the Titan's heart is a sea of fire and force, full of burning intensity and energy. He exults in the death of things. To exalt means to enjoy, to delight in, to rejoice in. He enjoys the death of things. He enjoys it when there is ruin, destruction, when there is fall, when people are not able to live up to their souls, when they do evil and wicked things. That is what he feeds on. He feeds his strength with his own pain and others' pain. That is how he grows stronger, by bearing pain and inflicting pain on others. He enjoys, he takes delight in the world's pathos. Normally we feel very sorry if something is very pathetic, if it is regrettable and painful, sad, troubling. He just enjoys it. The pathos and the passion, intensity. And passion can mean suffering also, intense feelings, particularly intense suffering. His quality is pride. He is proud of himself and his power, his might, his strength. And that pride of his asks for struggle and pain. A pang is when you feel a sudden pain. In the meditations on Savitri series of paintings, there is one painting on this Titan. Kuta has painted him like a black demon, spreading fire and destruction and ruin everywhere. He glories in the sufferings of the flesh. He might have to perform all kinds of terrible austerities that feed his pride, that I can bear so much. Then comes this line, he covers the stigmata with the Stoic's name. There are two different references in this line. Stigmata, in the Christian context, are the signs of Christ's sufferings. We know about the nail marks left on Christ's hands, feet, and his sides. Stigmata means wound or a scar. And in spiritual history, there have been mystics who have felt their oneness with the suffering of Christ. And even stigmata have appeared on their bodies through that experience, these wounds. But here the Titan is not suffering like Christ. He is not doing this for the sake of humanity. He is doing this only for the sake of his own pride. He is covering that suffering, those wounds, with the name of the Stoic. Stoics were a school of Greek philosophers who advised that the way to becoming truly human was to learn to endure suffering. Not that they sought physical or psychological suffering, but they felt that the human way to deal with that is to remain nobly silent and to learn to endure and be patient. Yeah, we see these things happening even now. Sri Aurobindo probably has in mind World War II and Hitler, who was also even consciously opening to some Asuric power and displaying all of these characteristics, but it's not confined to that. We see it even today. Whole masses of men, of people enslaved under the domination of a single ruler. Things have not quite passed yet. Right.
Telling the parents, okay, you accept this, and you put up with this, because this is the way it is. But where does he say that, he says, leave Savitri alone. She knows what to do. But he doesn't say, is she going to make it or not? Is it going to work out or not? Is Savitri going to die or not? Leave that mystery there, unless somewhere he says he's going to succeed.
He hints a little bit at it, but he doesn't declare it. And it almost seems as if it must be worked out by her.
So since it hasn't happened yet, it's 1 year, so she's going to work out and go beyond what he says.
Yeah.
But she has to overcome.
Right.
He says, you can't overcome.
Yeah. But he kind of hints that he says she alone can do it. In a way, she has come for that. Right? So he suggests, but he doesn't declare it. Also, he's kind of stealing her will through all of this. He's kind of strengthening her so that she will face this adversity, this fate, this huge challenge and ordeal to overcome these karmic wheels that have been turning for so many millennia.
She hasn't left yet. She's carrying it, right?
Mm.
She's still there.
Right.
Getting all this data.
Right. So he's also giving her hints of who she is and her mission and her work.
And reassuring her that in order to move this world in the path, you have to suffer too.
Yeah.
So she's there.
Right. He says she has to kind of crawl on these stones of suffering to her path, to her goal. So I think we're going to stop there for today.
Haste not towards Godhead on a dangerous road. Open not thy doorways to nameless power. Climb not to Godhead by the Titan's hold. Against the law he pits his single will. Across its way he throws his pride of night. Heavenward he clambers on a stair of stone. Aspiring to live near the deathless sun.
Thanks to Sri Aurobindo.